Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Diana White. I'm the Director of Programs and Events at the PGA. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this conversation with the creator of Raising Kanan. Please join me in welcoming Sascha Penn, the executive producer, creator, showrunner, and writer of episodes 101 and 102. And a big special thanks to Starz for making this panel possible today for the Producers Guild. Leading today's conversation is Jenelle Riley. Jenelle is the Deputy Awards and Features Editor at Variety and is a three-time Emmy winner for hosting and producing PBS's Actors on Actors. She's also the writer of the short films Grand Gestures, Warning Labels, and Crazy Love. Thanks, Jenelle. I will hand it off to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so pleased to welcome today's guest, Sascha Penn. She already listed all your titles, so I just want to say welcome. And I always like to start at the beginning by asking people, what was your first job in this industry? Some people start in the mailroom, some people just jump in and make their first feature film. What do you sort of consider your entree into this business?
My entree into this business. I guess the way I sort of even imagined a career for myself in this business is that I was at Columbia Business School here in New York. I was a student there. I was getting my MBA, and I worked with Bob Title and George Tillman on this independent study project. And they were sort of like, "Oh, you should come to LA. The streets are paved with gold." And I made my way out and found out that they were not, in fact, paved with gold. But I slowly but surely figured a path for myself that did not involve my MBA whatsoever, and so here I am.
So, were you someone who had always been interested in entertainment, even though you were, pursuing this business degree? Was there a part of you that was always creative?
I guess the answer to that is yes. I grew up, with parents who were both immigrants who really learned about this country through popular culture. Movies were sort of a really big part of my childhood, as was TV. I think my parents really sort of assimilated into American society through, filmed entertainment to a certain extent. That's how they discovered what America is or could be. And so I think they handed that over to me, and here we are.
How did they feel when you said you were going to take that very expensive MBA and go into the entertainment business instead?
Well, I paid for my own education, so they didn't really know what to say about it. They were just like, "Hey, good luck. We'll talk soon." I think that was basically the reaction.
Well, Raising Kanan is a prequel to the hit series Power, which follows the early years of Kanan Stark. I know you were a writer on the original Power. So when did they first start to talk about, doing a prequel, and what interested you in being part of Kanan's origin story?
I think there's a few things. I don't know when Courtney Kemp, who's the original creator of Power, and 50 Cent, obviously, who was also involved in the creation of the universe. I don't know when they first started talking about the prequel. I was brought in, I guess, I guess it was before or maybe, I don't remember where it was in relation to when the original Power finished up, but I was brought in a couple of years ago. And Courtney had called me and said, "Listen, we're thinking about doing a prequel that would revolve around Kanan. 50 and I have talked about it. We think there's like the template would be sort of Goodfellas, And I, of course, like every writer and everyone who's ever watched a movie ever, Goodfellas is obviously sort of a seminal title and a movie that I think incredibly highly of. I think it's Martin Scorsese's best movie. And so, I was intrigued. Kanan was a character that I always felt like really had a lot going for him, especially, sort of as realized by 50. I thought he really gave the character some substance and nuance that maybe didn't even exist on the page, but he fleshed it out in a really interesting way. And so I also happened to have been in New York around the same time that the show was set. And I was in a completely different career at the time. I was actually working at Harlem Hospital in the sort of early mid 90s. And so I was really, I was really intrigued just for all those reasons. It was a challenge, obviously any prequel is, because you're living up to the character that's already been sort of established and beloved. And it's this sort of deconstruction thing where you have to you're building towards a finish line that you already have gone over to a certain extent. And so, that also, it was a challenge, but it was also intriguing. So that's sort of how it came to be. But really all they said to me at the beginning was, we want to do an origin story for Kanan. We're thinking Goodfellas is a good place to start. Have at it. That's basically how it.
Is that from the start? Did you know that 50 Cent was going to be the narrator, a la Harold Hill?
Yeah, Henry Hill.
Oh my God, very different character.
Yes. I think we had already, and in fact, they may have already had that sort of instinct. Courtney and 50 had already sort of thought to themselves, they would have 50 do narration from the grave, which, again, was super exciting to me because 50 really, he nails that stuff. He knows how to do it. So, yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about sort of, the parameters that were set up for you, because you are telling a new story, but also because of Power, we know Kanan's future. So what were the discussions about, making this show its own thing while also making it familiar and true to Power fans?
Right. I mean, great question. I mean, I think, I was given a tremendous amount of latitude by Courtney and 50. I mean, they sort of let me figure out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. What I will tell you is I think it was always discussed, I think, if I remember correctly, the jukebox would be really the only other character that would be in the series, at least from the beginning. Because, while there's been a lot of sort of public demand for Ghost and Tommy to be in this prequel, keep in mind, they were much younger. The way it was established is they were like 6-7 years younger than Kanan. So when this series starts out, just figure Ghost and Tommy are in like, 3rd grade or some shit like that. I mean, they're 9 and Kanan is, so I don't think they're gonna be out in the corner anytime soon. I hate to disappoint the fans, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, they said, look, again, they were incredibly sort of generous and gracious as it related to, what I could do. Obviously there are certain pieces of Kanan in the original Power that I have to sort of service, for lack of a better word. There is some discussion of how he got into the game, and there's even a moment in one of the episodes where he says, "Oh, I just came from visiting my mom." So we understand that his mother played some sort of role in his upbringing and that she was meaningful. But yeah, so that was all that was discussed. I mean, it really was, have at it and see what you can figure out. And so that's, because I had to come up with a pitch. I had to convince everyone to do it. It was not something that was locked in. I mean, certainly the original Power was so successful. I think the deck was slightly stacked in my favor, but I had to pitch it to 50 and Courtney. I had to pitch to the network and the studio, and everyone had to get on board to see if the thing actually worked, because who knew, really.
So was it you who sort of came up with the idea that it wouldn't just be Kanan's story, but we would learn so much about his mother, Rock?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
What attracted you to telling that story? Because obviously Patina Miller is so amazing.
Yeah, she's spectacular.
Yeah.
She's spectacular. And I guess this is the moment where I air my grievance that she was snubbed by the Image Awards. So I will do that now officially. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking, but that's neither here nor there. I think part of the joy of this opportunity is to sort of flesh out who Kanan was and where he came from. And, I think for all of us, our family of origin is a big determinant of who we end up being and becoming. And so, that was really, for me, that was the part where I felt like there was the most opportunity. And I will say, 50's own life story somewhat informed some of the choices I made. 50's, as has been documented, his mother was killed when he was much younger, when he was 8. but it was his relationship with her is something that was meaningful to him, as it would be anybody. And so I sort of leaned into that. And 50 and I talked about it a lot. I mean, obviously Rock is very, very different than 50's mom, Brenda. But, again, I felt like, that was a really important relationship for this kid, for a son. A son's relationship with his mother is always, not just important, but it can be complicated. It can be it's all sorts of things. And so I felt like that's a great place to start, is this kid and his mom in South Jamaica, being raised by a single mother. And that really felt like, the right thing to do. And then I thought, well, there's got to be an extended family too. It can't just be the mother. And again, like, 50's mom was in the game. And I felt like Kanan's mom had to be in the game too. I felt like there was a real opportunity there again to sort of, I would say there aren't that many characters like Rock on TV. And I think that also, whenever you can sort of break some new ground, that's always exciting. But I will say, and I've said this before, you never know, like Patina has taken this role, this character, and just taken it to a place that I never could have imagined or dreamed. I mean, she is truly spectacular. And, I mean, at some point, everyone's going to catch on. I mean, she is a Tony Award winning actress. So I think certain people know, but I think at some point, everyone's going to realize just how amazing she is in this role and how she's taken, I think people step into it feeling that it's going to be, somewhat predictable or familiar. And I think it's the exact opposite of that. I think, all the actors, Patina, London Brown, Malcolm Mays, Joey Badass, Omar Epps, Haley Kilgore, Mackay Curtis, all of them have given a real, just a real depth and complexity to these characters that I think is really unique for television. I think, whatever, I'm biased, but I think it's a special show.
It is a fantastic cast. And I actually want to talk a little bit about the casting process, because it's a huge feat to step into a role made famous by 50 Cent.
Yes.
And let alone, I actually don't know how old Mackay Curtis is in real life, but he's playing 15 years old.
Right.
Where did you even go about finding him?
I mean, it was an interesting process because, the original Power had been sort of beset by all sorts of leaks. And so there was this real instinct to protect this process and to, and really what we didn't want is kids coming in and doing their best 50 Cent, imitation. And so the sides that were given to the actors to come and read from did not have Kanan's name, because if it had said Kanan, everyone would have known. And it was also, they were not told that they were reading for a Power series. And so we saw a lot of kids. I mean, we saw a lot of kids, a lot of whom were really, really great. But really, Mackay came in and sort of, look, I mean, he won it from the moment one of the things that 50 does really well is he gives the character a sort of sensitivity and charm that you don't necessarily expect out of that character. And Mackay has the same thing, I mean, he's a kid who's able to tap into this sort of really sensitive side of the character, which allows us as writers to do all sorts of really amazing things. So he just, he came in and he read, and kind of everyone was blown away. And then we brought him in to do a chemistry read with Patina.
Wow.
And so once we saw them together, it was like, all right, we get it, here we are.
So Patina was cast first?
Patina was cast first. That part of the process was pretty easy because Patina came in, and it was kind of done. She read, which in and of itself was kind of amazing because in this day and age, there are a lot of actors who won't read. They're sort of, and that's a challenge for us as creators and writers. There are great actors out there who are just like, well, no, I don't read anymore. You either give me, and I understand that completely, and I'm sensitive to that. At the same time, there is a leap of faith that you take, that sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's the challenge of what we do. That's the challenge of being a producer. But Patina came in, she was in Vegas for some family gather. I forget what it was. There was some family shit that was happening in Vegas. And she was supposed to go back to New York. Instead, she changed her flight. She came to LA. She read in the room. And she won it right there. And that was that. The rest is history.
And with Mackay, I'm curious what sort of guidance you give him, because I don't know if you wanted him to, once he knew that he was playing Kanan, if you wanted him to watch the other performance, if you wanted him to sort of study what 50 Cent did, or if you told him to just be a blank slate, or maybe he even talked to 50 about the role.
Well, he did. He talked to 50 quite a bit. I mean, listen, 50 has a very, very distinct cadence and way that he speaks, some of which is how he was born. Other, I mean, as is well documented, he was shot a number of times and that affected his speech pattern. And so, that was something we felt like we needed to at least come close to approximating. And so Mackay's worked really, really hard to get that. And look, it's important that all these actors, well, it's really Mackay and Haley who plays Jukebox. It's important that they see the adult version of who they are. And for people who've watched Power and remember Jukebox, what Haley Kilgore is doing as Jukebox is incredible. Like the parallels between the performances, because Anika Noni Rose played Jukebox in the original Power. Yeah. And so what Haley has done, I have to say, I'm like constantly just in awe of, with all the actors, the level of preparation, the level of care. It's just, it's really, I guess sometimes it works out this way where you just have a cast that just, every day shows up and gets better and better and better. It's an amazing experience.
It's amazing. I want to talk about the challenges of making a period piece, because even though the early 1990s, well, actually, they were quite a while ago. It feels like they weren't that long ago, but that's
30 years ago.
Tricky. Yeah, it's almost easier, I think, to set something, in the far past, as opposed to, where a lot of people in your audience are actually going to remember the early 1990s. Did you sort of anticipate the challenges of that?
I don't think I anticipated the challenges as much as I should have. First off, New York has changed a lot since 1991. So there's that challenge. What the other thing that's really impacted, there's been a pandemic. And so as a result of that, many of these restaurants have put their tables out on the street, right? Well, guess what? That makes it really hard to shoot a show that's set in 1991 in the street, because that stuff didn't exist there, then, excuse me. And then, bike lanes, the city's changed a lot. Interestingly enough, neighborhoods like, and I guess this is a commentary on the world, neighborhoods like South Jamaica have not changed quite as much. And the other places where we shoot, which include the Bronx, we shoot a lot in Soundview, and we shoot in Mount Vernon and Yonkers. These places have not changed as much. And so that's been fortunate for us, I guess, but again, I think it speaks to a larger issue. I think wardrobe has been tough, because, there's not a ton of 1991 era wardrobe that's available, and I'll be the first to say, like, we've had a couple misses that, of course, the people that watch the show catch immediately. Like, we had someone wearing Jordans, and the design on the heel was different than it was in 91, because Nike keeps re-releasing Jordans, so you can, in that respect, we were able to get, but they're not exactly the same. So there's stuff like that's always a challenge. We've had to build stuff ourselves as it relates to wardrobe. The character of Unique, who's played spectacularly by Joey Badass, a lot of his wardrobe is actually built by Dapper Dan, as well.
Really?
Yeah, as well as the incredible wardrobe costume designers we have on this show, Sergey White, Frank Fleming, who are amazing. So it is a challenge. picture cars, all that kind of, it's everything you think it would be. And to your point, yeah, I mean, a lot of the people watch the show were alive back then, so they know what's bullshit and what isn't. And you know, that's part of the, as well as the other thing that's interesting is, you know, we like to give the actors some leeway to, like, you know, improv, throw this and throw that in. You know, a lot of these, you know, Omar Epps, who's of a similar age to me and remembers, he's real good about it. So is Petit. But, you know, Mackay, some of the younger guys, they'll throw contemporary slang, you know, right. And you're like, nah, man, no one was saying bro in 1991. You know, no one was saying cap in 1991. So it's stuff like that we sort of deal with. But it's also fun. It does bring you back. You know, there are days when I show up on set and I see all the picture cars lining the block, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm back again. Someone pressed a button. Although I don't feel that age anymore. I wish I did. I wish it was that easy.
It didn't even occur to me that, like, Mackay wasn't probably even alive in the 90s.
So. He was alive in the 90s, but not until later in the 90s, and wow. He has absolutely no recollection of the 90s. Same with Haley.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yep.
In addition to all the challenges that go into making any show, you shot during COVID, I believe.
We did.
Wow. Were we already fairly into the pandemic when you?
No, we had just finished shooting the pilot. We were 2 days into the second episode when we got shut down. And then we were shut down for about 7 months. And then we came back in October of 2020 and we started shooting again. And I think Kanan and Ghost were two of the first shows to come back in New York. And yeah, I mean, look, it was a challenge. I mean, back then we really didn't know, you know, I mean, I remember the first day we were scouting locations when we came back in October, and we were like a really small space. There were probably like 10, 15 of us in the space. I just remember looking around being like, man, are we all going to die? Like, are we going to die making a television series? Like, cause that shit doesn't seem worth it to me. So it was, you know, there was, it was a little tense, you know. I think everyone was pretty on edge, you know. There was a lot going on, as I'm sure we all remember. I mean, there was an election happening too. There was just, you know, a lot's happened.
Wow. Has by the way, I think we're allowed to talk about, you're shooting the second season now, or you've just wrapped?
Yep. Wow. We're at the very end of shooting the second season.
What can you tell us without spoiling, you know, that we can expect? And also, was it a little easier this time around now that protocols are a little more common and in place?
It was a little easier until the last few weeks.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, yeah. we've had to push our return. We start shooting again tomorrow. We were supposed to start shooting 2.5 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, what I can say about season 2 is that, you know, it's a little bit of the chickens coming home to roost, you know, in that, you know, obviously there were some revelations in the first season that really become prominent issues in the second season. And I think the relationship between Rock and Kanan, while already complex, becomes even more complicated. And I think, you know, it's an experience we all go through to a certain extent, which is we start to see our parents differently. Yeah. You know, there's that moment, that sort of transformative moment where all of a sudden it's like you see your parents as human beings, as opposed to these sort of pillars of who you are and your life. And that's always a bit of an eye opener. So there's that. That's definitely what's happening. Rock at the same time is trying to expand the business. There's a new character played by Omar Dorsey from Queen Sugar, who comes in, who sort of, you know, becomes a prominent sort of in a way almost like a mentor to Rock. You know, Lulu, who's played by Malcolm Mays, becomes more involved in the music business and maybe isn't quite as focused on the family business, which creates some tension. Marvin is very much, you know, trying to figure out who the hell he is after, you know, his back and forth with Jukebox in the first season, trying to piece his life back together again. Unique, you know, obviously ended season 1 at a bit of a low, so he's trying to rebuild himself and his life, which of course brings him into contact and conflict with Rock. So there's just a lot of stuff that's happening, and as the season progresses, it gets more and more sort of intense. The season ends in sort of spectacular fashion. There's a lot of gunfire that's exchanged at the end of the season. But we like, I think one of the things you were asking earlier about, how does, in terms of what's Kanan's relationship to the original Power and all that. And what I would say is, look, this is definitely, I think Kanan's a little bit of a slower burn maybe than the original Power and Ghost, which is how we like it, which is how it was designed, which is how Courtney and 50 and I wanted it. But I also think it does share a lot of that Power DNA in terms of, it's this character-driven crime series, Yeah. And it's about characters that frankly we probably don't see enough on TV. But at its heart, what this show is it's a family drama, and I think that's really that's what makes it great. I mean that's really the heart and soul of the series is this family.
Absolutely. And I cannot wait for series 2. I'm not trying to rush you.
Okay.
But,
Best we can.
but I'm very anxious to see where everything goes next. Again, I want to remind everyone watching at home, you can actually catch the whole first season, should now be available on Starz.
Oh, yeah.
Again, congratulations on a great first season. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you.